Breaking Muscle podcast. I am Pete Hitzman, managing editor of BreakingMuscle.com. In today's show, Coach Shane Trotter sits down with another Breaking Muscle regular, Justin Lind. They delve into his affection for the kettlebell, his training mindset, his motivation for getting into coaching, and his approach to riding, among many other topics. Justin is a lifetime athlete with a diverse background and professional education. He is an RKC Level II kettlebell instructor, as well as a CrossFit Level I trainer and a certified USA Gymnastics coach. He rounds out this background with a certification from Precision Nutrition, and you'll get to hear his take on the one nutrition myth that is holding everybody back.
We have Justin Lind here today for the Essentialist Series interview. Justin is coming to us from Santa Barbara, California, and very excited to have him on. He is a kettlebell and gymnastics expert, amongst other things. So we'll jump right in. The first section is the Getting to Know You section. So first, steak or salmon?
Gotta say salmon.
Salmon, right on. Right on. Me too. It's my favorite. 1 rep max or VO2 max?
Oh gosh, this one's hard. My first love in training is VO2 max. Although I went through a pretty big Olympic lifting phase, but I guess I gotta say VO2 max.
VO2 max, right on.
Yeah.
I'll keep you alive anyway. Here we
That's
go.
right.
Gymnastics or martial arts?
Easy answer, gymnastics.
The first, I think I'm fairly certain that you were the first to go gymnastics there too.
All right, cool.
Of my, I think, 6 interviews. Air conditioning / heat or the internet?
Probably the internet.
Sure.
Yeah, you can always put a jacket on or take your shirt off, right?
Sure. Modern Family or Game of Thrones?
Modern Family. Not a big Game of Thrones fan.
Uh-huh. Good. Star Wars or Star Trek?
It's Star Wars.
Star Wars. Bill Belichick or Pete Carroll?
Pete Carroll.
Pete Carroll.
Yeah, I was kind of raised on
West Coast
USC
guy.
football. My whole dad's side of the family are big Trojan fans, so I got to go Pete Carroll.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Greatest invention of the last 100 years is?
That is a great question. I'm going to go with the skateboard.
The skateboard.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear more on why.
I just love skateboarding. I've done it all the time since I was probably 5 or 6 years old. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right on. What's the one place everyone should visit?
I think Iceland. It's very, very unique, and it's just such a stark landscape. So it's like nowhere else I've ever been.
Most our problems would be solved if only blank was the dictator, and it can be a fictional character.
Yeah, this one was hard for me. You know, the first person that came to mind was Laird Hamilton. I'm not sure why. The big wave surfer, he's getting into kind of like some unique training stuff too. And that's just the first one that popped into my mind.
He's got a kind of cool philosophy.
He does. He's got a cool training philosophy, and he's developing some neat training stuff. He's doing a lot of breath work and water work, and he's big into the Wim Hof stuff. And I think he's got an interesting outlook when it comes to training and life. And
Right on.
So,
I think Jack Johnson would be a great answer too.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, they're probably a little bit in line when it comes to outlook on life.
Sure. Right on.
So, yeah.
All right. What one word best describes you?
Gosh, that's hard too. Maybe curious or seeker,
Seeker.
something like that. Yeah.
Thinker.
Yeah. Thinker, maybe. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, now we're going to jump into the questions of depth. So these you can go as long, as broad, as deep, or as wide as you want to go. We'll just see where it takes us.
All right.
Okay? So, you got 1 hour of sleep. Do you train anyway or call it and train another day?
I guess I would just have to think about how things feel when I'm warming up and all of that. Likely I would probably not train. Just call it. I'm not a person that does very well on minimal sleep. And I could see myself not feeling too well. But, you know, it depends on what the week looked like before it and what maybe the next few days are going to look like. Because sometimes one night of bad sleep, the next day you're okay. It's the following day that it really seems to get you. So
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I guess I would kind of warm up and start moving around, try some things, see how it feels, and then not be afraid to call it when when it really gets into the intense stuff. But that's kind of how I take every day, anyways. It's just kind of do a warm up that's going to encourage some paying attention, and then make the decision on what kind of stuff is going to happen that day.
So just a mindful approach to training, and just kind of checking in with yourself and seeing where you're at.
Yeah. But I imagine on a day that I've gotten 1 hour of sleep, not feeling terribly good after I warm up. So probably I would call it.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you have a consistent training schedule? Do you train every morning? It sounds like you warm up anyway. Is it almost daily practice?
I try to move first thing when I get out of bed. Doesn't always happen when you have like the early clients or early classes. Spend the first couple minutes of the day moving around, doing something a la 5-minute flow from Max Shank. And then when it comes to working out, I basically just kind of see how I feel. I try to get intense things in at least 3 times a week, some really fast or some really heavy things, and then try to move every day, even if it's just get in the gym and play with handstands and Turkish get-ups for 45 minutes.
Sure.
So I'm not as consistent as I once was. That's kind of the great paradox of coaching, is that you spend all day in the gym, and by the end of a long day, you're kind of ready to leave. So it's you end up training a little bit less consistent than maybe you once did before you got into coaching. So, or at least that's been true for me.
Sure. No, I mean, I hear that often. Yeah. Sounds like, and this goes to something we were talking about before the interview. It sounds like all your work is very quality driven. Where you're just in touch with your body, and it's not as much designated sets and reps as much as really kind of checking in with yourself and trying improving skills, improving speed, and improving just the form and flow.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's very quality driven, and then depending on how I feel, and I am going to do something intense, then I'll figure out something with some sets and reps and all of that. And then once that's laid out, then it's commit to it just like you normally would have. But I think people that walk in and they've got something on a piece of paper that just someone wrote down for them, and they're just gonna grind their way through it no matter what. You're gonna be fine for a while, and that's gonna work great until it doesn't. And it's not necessarily the best way to do it. I mean, like there are some amazing coaches out there, amazing places where you can get programming and all of that, but just because someone wrote it down on a piece of paper doesn't mean that it's the right thing for you to do today.
Sure.
It might be a great overall look, but they don't know what your life has looked like leading up to that point. Necessarily. So I think having a little bit of understanding that there's going to be days that you're just going to have to not do what's written, and knowing that that's okay, is really, really big.
Sure. Well, and with kettlebells or gymnastics, you could almost still ride it, but just the execution is slightly different. For example, Turkish get-ups. Well, okay, I'm not going to go 24K. I'm going to go lighter, or maybe I want to bump it up. I want to go an extra set here, at 32 or whatever it is, or maybe I slow it down and.
I was just gonna say that's a great way to do it. Come in and do the 1 minute Turkish get up or something, where you're long holds in each phase and all that kind of stuff.
I've heard.
It's a great way to kind of figure out where you're at.
Exactly. I forget who said it, but Turkish get-ups are like loaded yoga, and so there's you can rev them up, or you can amp them down, and it becomes kind of a restorative practice.
Absolutely. Yeah, that sounds like a Dan John-ism.
Probably.
But yeah. Yeah, that's a great one. I like that quote.
Yeah. Well, cool. Let's move forward here. Is there one life event that most shaped your life trajectory?
Yeah, that's actually a pretty easy answer for me. I had a back injury when I was, how old was I? Probably 25. I'm 29 now, and It was relatively minor. Something that I actually did in high school for the first time. I was 15 and I sneezed and I had a rib go out of place and strain some of the intercostal ligaments,
Wow.
kind of in one of the floating ribs in my back. And I have tweaked it several times over the years. But when I was younger, it would never go out that bad, and it would be really sore for a couple days, and then eventually I'd be fine. And when I got more into some heavier training after college, I tweaked it. I was actually doing the CrossFit Open in 2013, and I was doing a 115-pound power clean, and I didn't even think it was sloppy. Like I don't know if I've ever done an ugly power clean in my life, but
Mm-hmm.
it was obviously ugly enough, or something wasn't right, that I tweaked it and immediately dropped the bar and found myself on the couch for the next 4 or 5 months. Which, looking back now, I should have been out trying to move around and do more,
Mm-hmm.
but at the time I didn't know it, and
Sure.
I was just starting to get into coaching at that time, and it was a part-time thing. I used to work as an engineer, and then that's when I got into some more intense training, and I was kind of doing both. And I was just getting into coaching part-time, and that injury really, really made me step back and look at the way I was training and recovery and mobility, and be smarter about my training. And it really was this paradigm shift in the way that
Mm-hmm.
I thought about my body and my training and all of that. And that experience made me a much better coach, but it also made me want to be a coach full time. And probably about a year later, kind of after the recovery of that, I ended up leaving engineering, and I've been coaching full time ever since.
Sure. And that was somehow that was kind of an impetus to get you on that path to leave.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that the experience of coming back from that injury, and just all the thinking I had to do about what led me to it, made me a much better coach and gave me some perspective that I might not have come to, or at least not so soon, if it wasn't for that injury. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a rough couple months when I wasn't able to do much, but I look back on it now as a gift. And
Certainly.
I've actually been thinking about this a lot lately. I just found out this week that I might have a hernia. And so I've been really trying to remember that, you looked back on that last injury 4 or 5 years ago as a big gift, and hopefully you're going to get to a same understanding of what's going on right now. So, yeah,
That's such a tough. It's such a tough way to. I mean, it's a mature understanding, but it's such a tough way to
it's tough.
approach these things
Yeah,
because there tends to be a reverberation for a while
yeah.
from any of these large injuries. Uh, it's almost a scar that's always there with you in some way, shape, or form. But
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'm always aware of that little spot in my back, and I'm probably going to always be aware of this little spot in my abdomen now.
hmm hmm it's
And
no
but it's
fun.
okay. It's just a lesson,
It's
and trying to move past it. So.
absolutely there's when people look back on their lives, the greatest spurts of growth tend to come from the worst news and the toughest challenges, and so
Indeed.
yeah, it's but it's not fun in the moment.
No, and I'm sure you can relate that, training is such a big part of your life. So when you aren't able to do things physically challenging,
hmm
everything else seems to feel out of balance in your life.
hmm
And it's been about 2 weeks now since I've been able to do anything intense, and feeling a little out of balance, but it's
Certainly.
okay.
Certainly,
Yeah.
you have to sub some other uh, self-development habit in or something, right?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I remember it. For me, I've done plenty of horrible power cleans in my life, and that was one thing that really made me want to get into training high school athletes. We had no concept of power clean form when I was in high school. They didn't tell you that. I was a middle linebacker and a fullback, so I knew I had to be strong. And coach said, "Get that bar from here to here,
Yep.
here, right?" That's what everyone did, and you didn't think twice. And that's caused. I had a bad back my junior year, a worse back my
Wow.
senior year of high school, and I've been dealing with it since.
Yeah.
It, it, so but those things, again, that's a large reason I took the career trajectory I did, and thank goodness I did. It's wonderful. So there's always those silver linings, like you said.
Absolutely. Yeah, you learn something really, really valuable from an injury. It's a slap in the face that can be paradigm shifting. And I can remember as I was coming back from that and kind of deciding to coach full time, I remember telling some friends or my family or something that I feel like I have to coach full time now because I have a message to share, and I just remember saying something along the lines of like, I feel like I have something valuable to share and I want to shout it from a mountaintop. So I guess I got to go and, find that mountaintop.
Sure. It's probably a big reason you started writing too.
It's a huge reason I started writing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for me, my favorite thing I do is get to write, get that creative expression.
Absolutely. Me too.
So, yeah. All right, we'll move forward. You have one regret. What is it and why?
Yeah, this was a hard one. I don't have one kind of glaring regret in my life, but I guess a general one is I wish I was better at staying in touch with the people that matter to me. I'm pretty good at kind of dropping back into some closeness with people that I haven't seen in a long time, and just because I haven't had constant contact with them doesn't mean I don't still feel the closeness in like for myself internally. But I always wish that I was better about staying in touch with people and expressing how much they mean to me. And it doesn't come very naturally. So I guess if I had to call that a regret, it would just be that, be better at staying in touch and outward showings of affection for the people that matter to me.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to be what matters most. Those relationships.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, and that's a challenge. I'm an introvert at heart.
Me too.
So that makes it a really big challenge. I don't want to dial anyone on the phone at the end of the day.
No.
So, but you're right. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good lesson. The things that really matter.
Indeed.
Number 4, you have to choose only one exercise for life. What is it and why?
Yeah, that. I'm torn between, we were just talking about Turkish get-ups. I'm torn between a Turkish get-up and a kettlebell swing, which I guess, speaks to my RKC background. I often joke with some clients that you could probably survive on a diet of only swings and get-ups. But if I had to pick one between the two of those, I guess I would go with the swing just because of the power and the metabolic aspect of it.
Sure.
You could do get-ups quickly, but I don't necessarily like it, and you definitely aren't going to get nearly as much of the metabolic loading as you will from even a set of 10 heavy swings. So yeah, I guess I'll go with the kettlebell swing.
Sure.
And just for the,
there's a little bit more benefit.
There's a little bit more to it. Yeah.
Broader.
Teaching you to engage all of the things that unfortunately in modern society we're not terribly good at engaging. We're all pretty disconnected with our posterior chains and the whole back half of our body, and a swing done well really gets you to counter, I think, some of the areas that most people are lacking because of modern life. It translates so well to athletics and power development, but also just offsetting some of the patterns that people find themselves in regular life. That I guess I got to go with the kettlebell swing.
Absolutely. Yeah. You really can't. I think Chris Holder, who said he can make champions with a kettlebell swing.
Yeah. And he lives it too. He lives it. He does a workout that I'm not sure if he brought it up when you spoke to him, but I call it the Holder Special, and it's just 10 by 10 kettlebell swings. You do 10 heavy swings and you walk a lap of the room just for a little bit of active recovery. It's about 30 seconds, and you're right back on the bell. And another 10 swings, and that's a big part of his personal training diet, and I do that pretty darn often as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Pavel simple and sinister plan is, as you,
Yeah.
it's 10 by 10, working up to 10 by 10 kettlebell swings, and 5 get-ups aside. So there you go. You're in good
Right.
company in those
Right.
ways. Yeah. Okay. What is the one training or nutrition myth you'd eliminate from the face of the earth forevermore?
That's a great question. There's so many. I think calorie restriction.
Mm-hmm.
That calorie restriction is a viable option for losing weight. It just, I mean, I can't talk enough how pervasive that is in
Yeah.
trying to get people to unlearn that myth. It's probably the hardest thing to counter, to get
Mm-hmm.
people to eat enough and eat well to like fuel the changes they want to see.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess the other side of that is just that people that have been doing some pretty heavy calorie restriction for long periods of time, they just do so much damage to their body. Their entire metabolic system and their hormones are just so out of whack that it takes a long period of just getting them back to a healthy level of eating and a healthy amount of eating to even put their system back in line before they can actually start seeing changes. So it's like they have to do so much to even get themselves back to baseline before those changes that they're making start to have an effect. So like doing long-term calorie restriction actually, I think it lengthens the process that it takes for people to really lose body fat and gain some muscle, because there's an adjustment period to get back to like just getting your metabolism back online
Yeah.
and good hormone levels or healthy hormone levels, and then some the new patterns you've developed in eating can actually start taking effect. So yeah, I mean, I see guys that are, well over 200 pounds and sometimes eating like 1,100 calories a day. It absolutely blows my mind. I don't know how
And
they're
that's not
not.
sustainable. So they get
Oh,
the
absolutely
yo-yo,
not.
and their metabolism
They get
shuts
the
down,
yo-yo.
and now you're fatter than you were eating the
Yeah,
same thing you
yeah,
used to.
with less muscle and
Yeah.
just hormones out of whack.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know how they do it. I mean, sometimes it's a couple years, and I'm like, if I did that for one day, I would have hunger pains. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how you've been doing this for years. It just that's a testament to how much, I don't want to say damage, but kind of how much damage they've done to their system. Where it's like, if you can be comfortable going through your day with that little, and like some people wear it like a badge of honor, like, oh yeah, like I only need this amount to like feel good. I'm like, oh man, like I don't think you know what feeling good is then.
Sure. Well, it's like
Yeah.
the flip side. Anyone who's eaten fast food every day of their life, twice a day, they don't know what feeling. This is how they feel. They're used to feeling awful all day. The first time they start, for whatever reason, I've seen, health. They have a health event or something. When they start eating well, and then they allow themselves to go back and eat how they used to one day, they universally they say, "Oh my gosh, I felt awful.
Yeah.
I had no idea that I was really feeling that bad every day." I hear that
But it takes
constantly.
a while. It
Uh-huh.
takes a while to get to that point where you're actually feeling good enough that you can understand how much better you feel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's very interesting that really that's such an issue. It it's almost as if people think food is bad for them. There's
Ugh.
such, calorie restriction is so in vogue. It's almost as if they think they look at food as this horrible
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Food is the problem.
exactly.
Yeah.
And again, you're talking about it taking a year or up to a year to undo some of those things. The same is
Yeah.
true of
Absolutely.
poor training methods often.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's why, in my eyes, it's just so important for us to have better physical literacy and nutritional education.
Yeah.
People they dig themselves in these deep holes, and it's not their fault. They don't. First of all, it's not prioritized by our nation culturally,
Yeah.
and then where they don't have any idea where to look for good information.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's a big one. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep.
What one habit or ritual do you most credit with success in life?
We kind of touched on it earlier, but it's got to go back to writing.
Mm-hmm.
My writing practice just grew out of kind of a self-writing thing. I just started journaling basically every day
Mm-hmm.
several years ago, maybe 5 years ago now, and then that kind of grew into like blogging and then eventually writing for Breaking Muscle and some other things. And I love the writing as a teaching mechanism to kind of share my experience and share what I have to offer. But even deeper than that, it's probably the most therapeutic thing that I do for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell people that writing helps you understand what you think about
Uh-huh.
a certain idea. And especially writing longhand. I love writing with a pen on paper.
Really?
Uh, most of my breaking muscle articles are handwritten first, and then they go into typing,
Wow.
or at least maybe not entirely handwritten first, but outlined.
Uh-huh.
Um, there's something about the act of like putting pen to paper that is really really nice for me. I make an analogy that I've told a lot of people and maybe even written about it, but that I imagine your brain is full of all these thoughts, and you might think you know what you think about something, but until you have to write it, you don't always know. And especially the writing it longhand, I imagine that your brain is like one of those lottery hoppers where it's like all these things bouncing around, and as
Mm-hmm.
you write and it comes out of your pen, they have to line up single file to flow out of the pen, and you get to
Uh-huh.
see them one at a time. Like people going through a metal detector at the airport or something.
Yeah.
You get to like examine each thing one by one as it flows out of your pen, like single file. And so for me, I writing just kind of helps me understand myself and understand what I think about something, and then some of the ideas that I get to explore in that, turn into articles and things that I end up sharing. So writing is, yeah, the long
I
answer.
I
In short,
completely
writing
agree,
is
though.
is
Yeah,
yeah.
anyone who's written a lot, it's therapeutic. But just like you said, it helps you understand your own thinking and who you are better.
Yeah.
It's a great reflection tool.
I was just gonna say it's like a mirror. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And the other thing I think is nice is when you write about things that we write about, tied to personal development,
Right.
it tends to be a good um, accountability tool.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've put it down. How can you act differently? So it kind of almost automates uh, the behaviors you want to see in yourself.
Yeah,
Um,
and I'm sure you feel this, at least for some of the things that you write, that a lot of it is a reminder to yourself. It's things that
sure.
I need to hear and remind myself of all the time, and then you write it because it's like, man, I need to hear this, and then it's like, well, maybe other people need to hear this too, and then you publish it.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
constant reminders to yourself.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Surely. Yeah. Yeah. I like that's exactly right. Oh, well, great one. I love that.
yeah.
Um, what one quote should everyone know and remind themselves of daily?
Yeah, that's a good one. There's so many darn good quotes, and I keep a little Evernote file of all these quotes that I like, and I'm
Uh-huh.
constantly highlighting things. And one that always I have two. I'll do two if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
The one that always strikes me is that famous Socrates quote. That is I wrote it down here. No man has the right to be an amateur in the matter of physical training. It's
Uh-huh.
a shame for a man to grow old without seeing the beauty and strength of which his body is capable.
Uh-huh.
I love that even so long ago, one of the I guess the people that's regarded as one of the great thinkers of our time, placed such a high value on taking care of your physical health and understanding what, because that quote comes in the larger context of him talking about, basically that your body has to be healthy in order
Mm-hmm.
for your mind to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that even so long ago they understood that. And maybe it's not surprising. I think that people were probably a lot more in touch with their physical health long ago because there was
Oh yeah.
less cultural patterns keeping them from it like we have now.
Certainly.
But I actually,
Absolutely.
the other thing that I'll say on this is I actually have a little kind of personal mantra that I try to remind myself of all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if this is something that I came up with, or I'm sure the idea behind it has been combined from a lot of sources that I've read or heard over the years. But I tell myself there's always something to work on and always something to celebrate. So just remind, it's like, because we get so, especially within the training world, we're so focused on moving forward and improving and being better all the time, and that's great. But if you don't have the perspective of appreciating how much you've done or how far you've come, then you're just going to be doomed to discontent, I think. So it's like, never lose that fire to keep pushing forward, but realize that there's always so many things about yourself and about your journey that you can celebrate.
It's a phenomenal balance. The two balance each other so perfectly. It seemed to be common knowledge almost that you have to be physically thriving first.
Or maybe it wasn't common knowledge. If all these great thinkers are having all these quotes and teachings about it, maybe it's constantly been a problem.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. In every civilized society, there tends to be a gravitation towards comfort. Yeah. Okay. You can only read one book. What is it and why?
I really like the one that jumps out to mind, because this is a hard question. If you can only read one book, and I kind of interpret that question two different ways, actually, where it's like, one is, what's the one book that you value enough that you think this should be the only book out there? Mm-hmm. And then two, it's like, what's the book that is entertaining enough that you could just read it over and over again?
Sure.
And
something that might balance the two, that has great value and entertainment value.
Absolutely. And the one that comes to mind that I've read it twice in the last year and a half, maybe, is Tribe by Sebastian Junger.
Okay. I've heard good things about that. I need to put that in my notes.
It's amazing. Yeah, I went through a kick of reading some of these books. Sapiens was another one. And then that same author just came out with a second one now called Homo Deus. Yuval Noah Harari, and his second book just came out, so that one's been popular. But I have to go with Tribe by Sebastian Junger.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah. And the I've heard great things. That the basic tenet is that tribes somehow that you're able to accomplish more when you have the tribe mentality.
Kind of, yeah. So it's all about human connection, but the biggest thing is that it talks about kind of rites of passage, and that we no longer have it. It speaks specifically about men, but it's about a lot of human nature stuff too, where we used to have a lot of kind of built-in cultural rites of passage. Like when you look back at ancestral societies and hunter-gatherers and all that kind of stuff, and some of the Native Americans in this country, that as part of the culture and part of someone's upbringing, there were these rites of passage and these things that signified when you were moving into adulthood, both for boys and girls, and that and it was always a combination of a psychological challenge with a hard physical challenge, and things that got you to really challenge who you are and your place in the world, and really things that drive that kind of understanding of yourself.
Wow.
And he comes at it from the perspective of being a war reporter, and coming back with some pretty heavy PTSD, and his look at soldiers and that kind of stuff. He talks about indigenous cultures a lot too, but kind of the overarching theme is that he didn't feel like he had anything in his life that really signaled his moving into manhood. And that a lot of boys in particular in our modern culture don't have anything that they're so hungry for a challenge or something that is going to signify to themselves and signify to the world that they are now men. And it's like I've moved that, like I'm now a man, and it's like I want to establish myself as that. And we don't really have any inherent cultural mechanisms that you can go through, like a Vision Quest or any of the going on your first hunt, or there's all sorts of like examples of that kind of stuff. And then a lot of problems we see in society are kind of misguided male needing of some type of like affirmation of their maturity or a rite of passage or that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So, that sounds. I'm going to order that immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds awesome. And so I think of the. I don't know. I forget who does it. There's a YouTube clip called "The War on Boys." Kind of, and a little bit of loaded terminology there, clearly, but. You look at how we structure society, and certainly there's a lot of internal angst, not just for boys but for everyone. But the great thing about a rite of passage or something like that, there's clear values given to people when there's a rite of passage.
Absolutely.
That tend to give clarity. To purpose in life, to what values are worth struggling for, and anyway, and
it's a demarcation that this kind of early phase, child phase, if you want to call it that, is ending, and you're moving into this more mature adult phase, and you're now going to be valued as such, and I think a lot of people are hungry for just that recognition that, like, no, I am something greater now. And he speaks about a lot of things when it comes to women and women in indigenous cultures as well. So it's not just for boys, but we see this as a more pervasive problem with men in our modern society.
That makes perfect sense. I think of Fight Club. The generation of men raised by women, and kind of some of the thoughts behind that. What they're just seeking something today. I'm not pro violence in any way, but today's kids are very, very different upbringings than 30, 40 years ago.
Absolutely.
They don't have the same sense of autonomy. So that's I'm eager to read that. And on that note,
it's an interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
Oh, I was just going to say it's an interesting perspective, because when we talk about this kind of stuff, we border on the devaluing so much of the progress that has been made in gender equality in the last time too, and it's
a tough balance there.
It's the balance, yeah. So it's again, I guess always something to work on, always something to celebrate. It's celebrating how far we've come, but also realizing the types of things that have fallen away because of that. So it's looking at, like, look, it's fantastic the type of progress we've made towards women's inequality, but we also have to understand that there's been a little bit of a cost to our society in general, and it's not just a problem for men. It's a problem for society in general. If you have so many kind of disenfranchised or just frustrated men that don't feel a whole lot of purpose, and this is a really good look at it. He brings a fantastic perspective, and while I'm recommending it, I guess I'll recommend the audiobook as well, because he reads it. And I think when you get to hear their own words in their voice, there's something really special that comes through, because a lot of these stories are very personal for him, some pretty traumatic experiences. So I read the book, and then I found the audiobook, and I've gone through that as well. And now that we're talking about it, I'll probably restart the audiobook at some point soon. But it's fantastic.
Good. Okay, well, I will jump on that. If you could create one rite of passage for all our society, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean that's obviously that dovetails perfectly into what we've been talking about. I struggle with this because I feel like it has to be something that combines, an emotional kind of psychological challenge that really gets you to drop some of the thinking of who you are and help you discover it.
Mm-hmm.
That's worded kind of oddly, but
No, certainly.
but there
Something
needs to be a
that
physical challenge to it as well.
allows you to drop your preconceived notions of who you are or who you should be and actually discover
Who
how
you
you
should
react
be.
in certain situations.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah. Drop the cultural context that you think you're supposed to fit into and discover who you are,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is the biggest reason why there is rites of passage in almost every ancestral society. But as far as putting together what that would be, that's a really difficult question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if I can come up with a definitive answer for that one. Um, what kind of stuff do you get in the past on that? What kind of
I've,
answers?
I've had such great thoughts. Spending some sort of time with a veteran. I like
Mm,
that a lot. Some sort of volunteering. I really like a physical challenge. I've had a multi-state bike
ah,
or some sort of trek seems to be a cool thought. Um,
I
the
like the idea of a trek, especially something alone. I
uh-huh.
think that solitude can be really really
Hmm. That's what Chandler
good
Stevens
for
said,
you.
time alone in nature, which
Yeah.
I thought
So
there was a lot there to dig into.
there is. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the classic vision quest, but something. It combines a physical challenge with some solitude, which can be
Hmm.
very like emotional, psychologically trying,
Hmm.
and create space for you to make some pretty important discoveries about yourself.
Sure.
And I feel like any rite of passage needs to have some type of purpose and like feeling of accomplishment when you get to the end of it.
Yes.
And reaching the I guess the finish line of some type of trek
Hmm.
is a
Yeah.
trait
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah.
So,
That's a cool thing about the trek is it combines that time alone in nature with actual purpose and challenges that you'll have to overcome. But
right.
I think especially that's and of course it had to be designed well, but especially in today's world with the constant phone distraction and the people don't get to know themselves because they don't have any time to be you know in their own thought
Yeah.
just with themselves. I mean, we can't even go to the bathroom without having Facebook and Twitter up.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's a truly valuable experience that people can tap into is allow yourself to be bored, allow yourself to be walking for a long time with nothing but nature in your thoughts and open yourself up the other thing too for anyone who's run a long way or done anything uh, sort of distance related or even hiking or camping when you hike out for a full day to camp, things tend to be really uncomfortable early on.
Yeah.
And most people don't ever get past that initial discomfort. There's a lot of great pleasure and great self-learning and appreciation once you get it's the same way in exercise. Gosh, the first 10
Yeah.
minutes are my body's cranky. It's the hardest. Once I get
Yeah.
through that, it's an amazing experience often.
Right.
Um,
Or even the first week or the first month of someone beginning to get back in the gym or in the gym for the first place.
sure.
Um,
It's
yeah,
yes. That's a really
it's
good point.
that initial hurdle.
Yes. You can
Yeah,
just
and
see
that
everything is a struggle at first, and it's very
right.
easy to talk yourself out of it. I can't deal with this forever.
That's
Um,
right. And I think the reason why so many people struggle with that is because we don't have a rite of passage. It's just as you were saying that if
truly.
you've been through something trying like that before and you understand that, to kind of lean into the discomfort and get through that,
Hmm.
on the other side is going to be this deep sense of reward and fulfillment and pride and learning of it. So it's like if you have that type of an experience during some formative years and you understand that process, you're much more capable of committing to something like a fitness journey or I mean anything in life really. Everything's uncomfortable when you begin.
It brings about true confidence. Rather than the self-esteem movement that's gone so far in our society, it brings about actual confidence that can only come through actually overcoming challenges.
That's true. That's such a good point. True confidence has to be linked to a record of success, or at least a record of hard work. And just to try to build confidence without that, it's very hollow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. You have only one lesson you can impart on the next generation. All will adhere 100% to this advice. They will absolutely ignore any subsequent suggestions or advice. What lesson do you communicate?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, these last couple questions, they've all kind of tied into one another. And the first thing that comes to mind with this, and definitely what came to mind when you gave me a little preview of what we might talk about today, is that to spend some time by yourself. You have to spend one hour of every day just committed to self-work, self-love, personal practice, whatever you want to call it. And I think that could mean anything or a lot of different things for people, whether it's, developing a meditative practice or sitting down and journaling or just lying on your back on your bed looking at the ceiling for an hour with absolutely no access to your phone or to any of the type of connections that can pull us out of that deeper place. And I wish that people could spend even more than an hour a day, but just something to break that cycle and get people to understand that the good that comes from that type of time. Because I feel like you and I are in a unique place where we had a lot of formative years before phones and the internet became so pervasive, but we also are pretty young still since they have become so big. So we kind of have a foot in both sides of that really, really giant transition. I think we're going to look back at this transition, historically and understand what a big shift it meant for the population. Because I have two younger brothers, and they're 3.5 and 7 years younger than me, and they have a very different relationship to their phones and the internet, even though it's just a small age gap.
Well, I've noticed that over and over.
Some of the kids that you coach, I'm sure I coach. I coached even younger ones, and they have no formative years without that. So I don't think they even understand the benefit and what good comes and what type of like deeper understandings and feelings come from that kind of time, because they've literally never had it.
Well, constantly distracted, constantly stimulated.
Right. So we can have the perspective of like, oh, you know what? It's going to be nice. I'm gonna shut my phone off and
sorry.
I'm gonna shut my phone off. No, it's all right.
Computer's dying and my wife's coming in.
Okay.
You're
nice.
Good. Go ahead.
Perfect.
Sorry.
That's all right. I was just gonna say that we can have the interesting perspective of saying, I'm gonna choose to not listen or to not look at my phone for the next hour, because we know the value that comes from that. But I think a lot of kids growing up don't even see that might be valuable. So it would be, I think I would mandate that everyone spends an hour a day completely cut off from any of that access. And whatever that means you end up doing, even if it's just you sit and you read a book, that longer, slower type of thinking that comes out when you are away from that technology, I think would be really, really beneficial for every individual and society at large.
I think stress, anxiety, broadly would go way down. I've talked to people before about that. With this generation, especially, just what you're saying, they don't know what they don't know because they've never even experienced that world. And yet we have so much data and understanding now of that there are actual negative effects. That this is a new tool. We're going to lose these people if you just demonize it. So,
Right.
this is a tool, it has tremendous possibility. And yet,
tremendous benefit.
yes, and yet there are a lot of negative flaws that, we were not even ready for. There are a lot of consequences, side effects, if you will.
Yeah.
So now that we know that, we need to give them a context for how you responsibly use this, to enhance your life, not to control your life. And I think that's a great start right there. Going out, whether it's a walk or,
Right. Yeah.
some
A
sort
walk
of
or
practice.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Right on.
Yeah.
Well, cool, Justin. This has been awesome. I think it's.
Yeah. This has been amazing, Shane. You're doing a beautiful thing here, and thanks for including me in this.
Oh no, I love it. It's a gift to me, really. I'm amazed at the quality of people I've gotten to talk to, and it's neat to maybe we see too eye to eye. We're not challenging each other enough, but I've had a blast talking, so I appreciate it, Justin.
Absolutely, yeah. I've had a blast too. This has been amazing. So
Cool.
Thanks a lot.
We will stay in touch, and thanks so much for coming and talking.
Absolutely. Thank you.